The power of God is a term that has come up a few times in the book of Ephesians, and is something that we can easily be confused about, especially because of what many churches teach. We've all seen the covers of books written on the subject, unleash the power of God in your life, activate God's might and glory, let God do miracles in you, relieve your debts, repair your relationships, restore your health. You are kingdom kids, and therefore God's power should be evident in you. And folks, there's no doubt that God is powerful. In fact, he is all-powerful. We've seen this in Genesis, haven't we? That his power is absolutely immense. He just speaks, and the world came into being. Responding to Job, God says in Job 38, "Where were you when I established the earth? Tell me if you have understanding. Who fixed its dimensions? Certainly you know. Who stretched a measuring line across it? What supports its foundations? Or who laid its cornerstone?" God is all-powerful, and his works are magnificent and majestic. But is this power only seen in overt manifestations of the miraculous? How should we expect God to show off his power in our lives? And the disciples of Jesus wrestled with this too. They were expecting a mighty king to come and smash the Romans and to restore Israel. And so when the king arrives and speaks of love and forgiveness and turning the other cheek, he has everyone a little confused. Where is the fire? Where is the conquering? Where is the restoration? The disciples offered to rain down fire from heaven on a town that had rejected Jesus. Some even approached him for positions of authority to sit at his left and right, like being his commanders. There was something about Jesus' power that they had misunderstood, like so many today. Well, there's no doubt that Jesus is going to return, and we're told that he's going to make his enemies a footstool under his feet, meaning that he will conquer those who oppose him. There's also no doubt that Jesus did miraculous things. He healed the sick, he calmed a storm with just a few words, he fed 5,000 people with just a few fishes and loaves. He even raised people from the dead. And he did these things to show us that he is none other than God on earth. But the restoration he was coming to bring was so much bigger than to fix some cash flow problems or to restore physical healing. Ephesians has shown us that Jesus came to take us from being dead to being alive. Because we were in Adam, to use the language from our Genesis preaching series, we were dead in our trespasses and sins and hopelessly trapped under the wrath of God. But Jesus came to defeat eternal death that was owed to us. God comes and dies in our place to forgive us, and through his glorious resurrection, he brings us to life through faith in him. Folks, that is power. Jesus, God came not to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. Now, to loads of people, Jesus' death looked like weakness and defeat. It seemed powerless. Even those crucifying Jesus hurled insults at him and said, "If you really are the Son of God, come down, prove it, prove your power," because they wanted signs. But it was the very power of God on display in this act of love and mercy here on the cross to rescue us. The cross is not weakness and defeat. It is glorious victory won for us. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 1:18, he says, "The word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but it is the power of God to us who are being saved." If you're a Christian, God's power has brought you to life. Through Jesus, you've been blessed with every spiritual blessing. He has chosen you, he's adopted you, he's redeemed you, he has united you to other Christians and given you a family. Only God's mighty power could achieve all that. The same power that created the world that we've seen in Genesis chapter 1 and 2, the same power that raised Jesus from the dead is the same power that has recreated your heart and restored you back to God, and is the same power that is still at work in you. How is God's power seen in your life? It's not through giving you money and health, although he does graciously give us these things from time to time. But his power again is seen in the unexpected and sometimes weak-looking day-to-day, ordinary things. And Ephesians chapter 4 through 6 is really going to unpack some of these things for us over the rest of the term. But just to mention a few, God has reconciled us together, and God's power will continue to keep us united as we bear with one another in love, despite our many differences. Unity in diversity is what the world is striving to attain, but only the power of God can really achieve that, because the cross is where true reconciliation is found. Reconciliation to God and reconciliation to one another, because it is the place that humbles us, knowing that we all equally need forgiveness and saving. God has forgiven you and me of our sin, and his power will help us forgive others who have wronged us, and even enable us to pray for our enemies. The world can't do that. God's power will help you fight your sin that so easily entangles you. God's power will help you to be a fair boss, or to be a faithful employee, to be a loving husband or a submitting wife, to not discourage your children, to honor your parents, and to stand firm against the devil's schemes. This is the true Spirit-empowered life. Because on our own, we could never produce this kind of fruit of love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. We require the power of God working in us to get up tomorrow morning and to keep going. And this is what he promises to do. Until Jesus returns to fix this world, he will help us stand firm and to persevere in him. And this power, although looking weak to some, will shine out the power of God in a way that cars and wealth and health never can. The power of God, us relying on him to walk in the footsteps of Jesus, causes us to hope in him, to boast in him, and that in turn gives him all the glory and shines a huge spotlight on Jesus for others to see, highlighting their greatest need, which is not material things, but their need for forgiveness and restoration to God. You are kingdom kids, and God's power should be evident as you live out your life, but not for temporary wealth and health. You know, there will be a day when God gives us new, eternal, healthy, perfect bodies. There will be a day where he perfectly fixes our relationships and gives us a new creation as his inheritance, where there won't be any more debt. But until then, we don't have to activate God's power for things. Christian, you are empowered by the Holy Spirit today as you live for another kingdom, following in Jesus' footsteps, making much of him and loving others. In the words of Paul in Ephesians chapter 1, verse 18, he says, I pray that the eyes of your heart may be enlightened, so that you may know what is the hope of his calling, what is the wealth of his glorious inheritance in the saints, and what is the immeasurable greatness of his power towards us who believe, according to the mighty working of his strength.